Okay, it is 7 o'clock on Monday, March 7th, 2022, and this is a scheduled meeting of the Wellfleet Affordable Housing Trust. The meeting is being conducted by video conferencing in accordance with the open meeting law. Links to the video conference are in the posted agenda on the town website. The meeting is being recorded by the town. Anyone else desiring to record the meeting may do so as long as they notify the chair and do not interfere with the conduct of the meeting. Okay, having said all that, first item is announcements. I have one short one. I got a request from the town's public records officer on Friday for information about the Gull Pond Road project. And let's see, I'm going to meet Jim. And I can bring that up here if I can find it. Okay, sorry about that. But it's maybe hard to see, but it's a request for records relating to 64 and 70 Gull Pond Road from January 1, 2021 to date, communications with the appeals board. I have been through all of the Affordable Housing Trust minutes, agendas, and other documents. I've been through all of my emails and found nothing that meets that description, but I will email this to you folks, and if you find anything relevant, you can contact the town clerk directly with it. So
Yeah.
that's all I have on that. Are there any other announcements?
The trust, excuse me, the partnership and the Housing Authority had a joint meeting, and we approved and sent to the select board for consideration for the town warrant at the ADU changes that were recommended.
Okay, and we'll discuss those a little later in the meeting. Other announcements? Okay. Any other housing related status reports from 95 Lawrence Road or Housing Authority or local housing partnership?
Harry, I'll just mention that, as you know, we're looking for, we have a vacancy on the Housing Authority, the governor's appointee. We have had one interested person so far, so we hopefully will maybe be moving ahead soon with the process of getting that person, getting someone appointed.
Okay, thank you. And also, there is a meeting of the Technical Assistance Scopers Subcommittee on March 17th at 10 in the morning. That's a virtual meeting. Any other announcements? Any other housing related status information?
I see Ryan is here. Ryan did indicate that the town meeting was moved, likely to be moved to June 11th. I suspect
Okay,
everyone
thank
knows.
Okay. Support for creation of accessory dwelling units. Gary, I think you had indicated you'd lined up the community development partnership to make
Sure,
a
I can give a quick
presentation.
introduction, then I'll turn it over to Terry. But with us is Terry excuse me, Terry Barron, who is the head of the program for ADU. If my understanding is correct, the CDP got a grant to do the Outer Cape ADU promotion, or ADU, what they can do to develop more ADUs. And in addition, joining us is Ann Robinson, who is the person who has headed up our buy down program. And Ann, what is your official, Ann and Terry, maybe give us your official titles at CDP.
Sure.
Either one.
I'm the Director of Housing Rehabilitation Programs.
Thank
So
you.
I run our housing rehab program that's been in place for several years, and now we're building our ADU resource center under that umbrella.
And Ann, what is your official title?
I am the Chief Program Officer. So I oversee the housing rehab and the ADU program and the affordable housing programs and the economic development programs.
Oh, all right, many hats. So this was in the context of, we had a discussion at our last meeting about, are there financial incentives or other incentives that we can offer that would help to promote the creation of ADUs in Wellfleet? And we had a discussion about whether we could offer loans or offer buy down of the interest on loans, et cetera. So I had contacted Terry and asked her, what is CDP proposing? But specifically, is there something that we can do together that would promote ADUs and in particular offer financial incentives?
So you have the con.
Take it away, Terry.
All right. Okay. So yeah, just for a little bit of background. So yes, we did get some ARPA money in conjunction with Homeless Prevention Council. So it was a joint proposal. And so with that money, unfortunately, it wasn't as much as we had hoped for. But with that, we are in the process of creating what we're calling the Lower Cape Housing and ADU Resource Center. And so we will be officially launching in the next couple of weeks. So hopefully you'll be hearing all about us on the radio and seeing us in the press and all of that. So keep in mind that what we're talking about tonight are things that we are just starting to do, but we're very excited about it. So yes, the proposal for this ARPA money that we got was all about helping to create more stable housing and year-round housing on the Lower Cape. And so the CDP portion of this, if you will, is all around the ADU Resource Center. And so what our plan is, if you will, is we will be creating, or we're in the process of creating, a resource center that will help any homeowners that might be interested in creating ADUs. And it's all around technical assistance, because we find that a lot of homeowners they have a fear of being a landlord. They don't even know where to start in terms of building an ADU. And we want to become their experts in how do you find out if you have the septic capacity? How do you find out what the permitting process is in my town? How do I find an architect? How do I find a contractor? How do I find financing? And are there any incentives available? So, so our hope is that we can help people walk through this, and basically hold their hand the whole way through. Now, some of what we're doing with this ARPA money will be offering incentives for ADUs. And just to kind of round out the rest of this, with Homeless Prevention Council, they'll be working on some things like a housing stabilization fund to help keep people in their homes. And, some of those people that fall in between that don't quite qualify maybe for affordable housing, but, are having trouble finding housing. And so they'll be working on that. They'll be offering their resident services, landlord services, as well as we will be creating a database where hopefully people who have ADUs can find people who are looking for year-round housing and vice versa. So we won't be in the matchmaking business because that's a little dicey, but we do want to create a resource for people who can find each other. So when we talk about our incentives, what we are laying out right now is for anyone that is creating a new unit, we plan to offer them up to $10,000. And that would be for someone who is renting it on a year-round basis, would have to show, proof that they have a year-round tenant. Our thought is that it would be provided in the form of a 5-year deferred forgivable loan. So they would have to show proof over those 5 years that they have a year-round tenant. And so it's not as much money as we would have liked to have seen. And had we gotten the original ARPA money that we had asked for, which we only got 1/6 of it, we might have been able to provide a little bit more, but we feel like we're, going to do the best we can with this. Let's see. So yeah, so that's our loan program. And we are obviously familiar with forgivable loans as we manage the rehab program for Truro, for that regional program. And so the thoughts are for Wellfleet and for you folks, how can you, sorry, let me back up. When I talked with Gary, I had mentioned that we had a regional stakeholder meeting a few weeks back where we had invited folks from all of the 8 Lower Cape towns, and as well as representatives from Barnstable County. And so we wanted to talk to them about, hey, what are you thinking? What are you seeing as barriers to, people building ADUs and things like that? And so I just want to run through, I just have a few notes. I want to run through what a few highlights from that meeting. We did have folks from 6 of the towns. Unfortunately, I think from what Gary said, perhaps the folks who were invited from Wellfleet may have been out of town at that point. So, but we did have 6 towns representative as well as a couple of people from Barnstable County. And so we talked about barriers to ADU creation, and a lot of that revolved around septic requirements and zoning. No surprise, cost of building them. And as we know through COVID, costs have kind of gone through the roof for construction costs and materials and things like that. A lot of folks who have raised their hand and said, yeah, I'd love to build an ADU. And then once they talked to their town and found out they would be required to rent it on a 12-month basis and not on a 1 week here and 1 week there Airbnb thing, they backed out. So that was a barrier. And just being a landlord, people are nervous about, how do I find the right tenant? How do I screen them? How do I deal with problems as they come up? We talked about, hey, what are you doing in your towns? Some of those things, there isn't a lot right now, I will be honest. Most of the towns were thinking about things, but hadn't quite implemented too much. But some of the towns talked about septic credits, especially because if, unless you're converting a room in a part of your home that already exists, if you're adding on, you may not have the current septic capacity, and that could be an expensive venture. So other incentives, just simple financial incentives, simplifying the permit process, changing the bylaws to make them easier, and providing amnesty for people who may have units that aren't currently permitted but would like to turn them into legal ADUs, and not want to be penalized for them. And most of the towns had some kind of amnesty or thoughts of putting an amnesty program into place. And when we had said, hey, what can we help with, by and large, the biggest contingent said technical assistance. If you can help our residents figure this thing out, it would be great, because we do get calls. They don't know where to start. And so if we can send them to you and you can help them, that would be great. And help them find financing and all of that. We talked about how to communicate going forward, which, how do we want to keep up on what towns are implementing, and how do we find it in all one place? And the majority of the folks said, we mostly attend the CDP peer group meetings, and we think that's a great avenue and a great method to do that. So let's just keep it there, and we can all talk about what we're doing at the peer group meetings. So so that's kind of how we left it, but we felt like it was a very productive meeting. Any questions on that?
Terry, I think, in your meeting, was there any discussion about how do we make ADUs affordable? And
Honestly, no, that didn't really come up in that meeting.
we struggle a little bit with, can we spend affordable trust money to promote ADUs without an affordability component to it?
Sure.
I don't know whether you have any thoughts or anyone has come forward with any ideas on that.
We've only had that one meeting, so we haven't, Ann, I don't know if you've had any further discussions with folks about this.
No, we haven't. I think you're right, Gary, that, if you're going to use the trust money, you probably do need to be restricted to units that are affordable. Wellfleet, I think on the 8 towns on the lower and outer Cape is the only one who ever had that affordable ADU designation. So it's certainly something that you could impose and provide assistance to folks who were creating affordable ADUs, but it just isn't an issue that came up. I think what most of the towns are interested in is just creating more year-round housing, and they're not as worried about its affordability.
Where is the money coming from for the incentives that they're thinking of using?
I don't know that that's.
From the towns?
Yes.
Well, they haven't decided on that. I suspect that the towns are going to use whatever ARPA money that they get to do this, but none of the towns had as of yet decided on any incentives or, how they were going to fund them.
So, Ann, I talked briefly with Terry about the idea of, similar to the buy down program, we would entertain a proposal from you. Let's just say it's a forgivable loan, and we would give it another, whatever it is, $10,000 or $20,000 to anyone who is willing to rent it affordably. But what we don't want to do is be in the business of administering and certifying. So is that something that CDP can do?
We can, but you might be surprised to learn that maybe we don't want to be in that business.
Well, I appreciate that, but
We
somebody
used to
needs to if we're going to have a program.
Well, I agree. We used to do that kind of monitoring for some of the towns, and honestly, it was so labor intensive trying to get people to respond with the information you needed in terms of what their income was and what the rents were, and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we really have done our darndest to get out of that business. So
I appreciate what you're saying, Ann, but if we're going to do it, someone's got to take it on. And honestly, I don't know that there's a better solution than CDP.
Well, you're right. I'm not sure there's really anybody else who would do it. Gary, for you, I will run this up the flagpole. So.
All right. But I'd like to hear from others on our committee. What would we like to see? What do we want from CDP?
Well, let me, Gary, add to that and talk about my conversation with Housing Assistance Corporation, actually almost exactly on the 14th of February. I talked to Jody Keegan, who's the ADU program director there, and I talked to Alyssa Magnotta, I think it is, who's their chief executive officer. And I described for her, Wellfleet's housing structure, that that this trust has authority to support housing for people up to 120% of AMI. Described to her generally our current resources as best as I can estimate them to be, and also warned her that those resources might be subject to a significant ask in connection with the 95 Lawrence Road project. So we might not be in a position to spend it all on something else. They talked about using stipends to bridge the gap between affordable eligible tenants and the market rate for an ADU. Possible programs we talked about were rent subsidies, not necessarily tied to ADUs, but to any rental. incentives for ADU creation, either a permitting subsidy or they indicated that one of the biggest barriers to creating an ADU was the whole septic upgrade issue. And that subsidies for septic upgrades might be a useful place to useful program to consider. We talked about temporary subsidies, as for example, a $2,500 subsidy to rent a property affordably for 1 year, or $5,000 for 3 years, or $10,000 for 10 years. She indicated that they had, as of that date, that they'd had 35 client interviews about ADUs, but only 2 had come from Wellfleet. And the final comment that came out of this was that a lot of their view is that a lot of people who own properties that could be converted to ADUs own the real estate, but don't necessarily have the capital to develop it, and that some of those people could fall in the qualify for affordable housing, even though they own property, and subsidies that enable them to use their property profitably might also assist in supporting housing, because it would enable them to stay in properties that they already own but are expensive to maintain and expensive to pay real estate taxes on, and so forth. They did indicate that they had some facility for qualifying and administering programs, but we didn't talk turkey about what that might cost or what it might be involved. And so that's where that conversation is at the moment also. I did take the position that I thought the trust was probably better off providing subsidies, either forgiving principal payments or forgiving interest payments, or providing subsidies that are tied to fairly short-term activities, than actually being a lender, lending figures to create one ADU. And there are at least 2 banks out there that have specifically on their website referenced their interest in making these kind of loans. So that was an initial conversation with Jody Keegan on February 10th, and then a much longer conversation with Jody and Alyssa on February 14th. That's what I have to add from what I was charged with from the last meeting.
Anybody
Comments,
else?
questions, thoughts?
Yes. Elaine?
Terry, could I ask, is the Housing Resource Center going to be considered a permanent entity?
Oh,
Okay.
Yes.
And in terms of whatever monies you're setting aside for subsidies, how many subsidies would you think you'll be able to cover?
well, from our initial budgeting, we're hoping at least 15. But the hope is that if we can show some interest and we can help some folks, and we can also show some of the, the barriers, like, the construction costs and things like that, that will give us more leverage to go back and apply for more money as well. So, but our initial budget, I believe, has 15 incentives there.
15?
Yes.
Okay. I'm wondering, I think, wasn't it a couple of years ago at town meeting that we authorized money for a pilot project for innovative alternative systems? And I think it was going to fund, they were looking to fund 50 of them. And I know they were mostly talking around the harbor, but I don't know if we can connect with the Clean Water Committee to see if they would set some money aside for someone who could do that ADU with an IA system. And I also agree with what Harry heard from Hack, that the people that I've talked to over the years that are interested in doing ADUs own property but they don't have the financial resources to do it. And I know Jay keeps talking about getting a home equity loan and it'll pay you back in an amount of time. And maybe that would really be an option for people, but I think the hand holding for that kind of thing could be very important.
Yeah, we
Ryan,
agree.
you have-
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
sorry,
Ryan, I
So-
see you, Ryan, I see you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, all right. So the innovative alternative septic systems, that has a subsidy of 12,500 per system currently. And it is within the Wellfleet Harbor watershed, which covers about 90% of the town.
Mhm.
So there's maybe like, I don't know, even like 4 or 5% of the built structures are outside of the watershed. The rest are within it.
Mhm.
So that's all I'll say on that right now. But yeah, it is for 50 systems, I believe.
Thanks. Terry, you mentioned something called septic credits. What is that?
Yeah, so a couple of the towns were talking about helping with some kind of financial aid
Same
for
kind of
folks
thing.
who, who need to upgrade their septics. And yeah, similar to Harry, your conversation with Hack, my notes in terms of, what, because Ann and I put our heads together on this before this meeting as well, where did we think that maybe you could help? And septic credits was one of them, adding additional incentives. Again, this might be a little bit out of your bailiwick, but making sure that folks do have amnesty if they want to convert an unpermitted unit. But then the other thing that we're running into is that we have folks, or we that have units, but in order to make it a legal ADU, it needs some work. It may need some electrical upgrades or things like that. And so we're thinking that, if they're willing maybe to turn it into an affordable unit, maybe helping folks like that with some financial aid to get that work done, because it may only be a couple of $1,000s or something, where we may want to keep the incentive money that we've got put to the side for really building new units as opposed to an existing rental unit, even though it may not be legal, to help convert that. So those are the kinds of things that we're thinking of. And of course, easing the bylaws and, easing the permitting process, things like that. So we've been in touch with every building department on the Lower and Outer Cape to talk to them about the process. And so we know what homeowners can expect, and we'll try to run interference for them at the same time if they're, not sure exactly what to do. So, and we've been talking to local architects about, are they willing to kind of be on our resource list, and what are they hearing from people who are calling them, and getting some approximate costs on units and price per square foot and things like that. And unfortunately, with the timing, costs are through the roof. So if they
But
could
it
build
is
it for
what it is.
50,000, it would be a no-brainer, right? But if it's 250,000, that's a whole nother story.
Right. It is what it is. We don't impact that. We have to live with it. Harry?
yeah, Terry and Ann, is there some kind of division of responsibility territorially between you folks and Hack, or do you overlap, or should we be, who's going to be the lead on the Lower Cape or the Outer Cape?
We're more fun.
I'm all for
No,
fun.
there's
thank you.
our service area is just the 8 towns of the Lower and Outer Cape. Hack serves the entire Cape. And we've been in constant contact with them. We have suggested to them it might be sensible for them to refer Lower and Outer Cape folks to us, and they can conserve their resources for other folks. But we don't have any specific agreement about that. And there's some conversation about people could apply to both programs and get incentives, from each one. And that would certainly make it more affordable and given that the costs are higher on the lower and outer Cape than the mid Cape and upper Cape, that might make some sense.
So Terry, I think the question I have is, if we would take a sum of money, I don't know what the right amount, and I'm only speaking hypothetically, but we were to commit $50,000 or $100,000 to creating affordable ADUs, and if it's 120% of AMI, then it's probably close to the rents that
Oh, yeah.
the market is, right, the market is getting. So I don't think we're talking about, really subsidized rents so much, but is there a program that we could put in place for a fixed amount of money that we could use? I don't need the answer today, but if you could come back to us with some program like that you would administer on our behalf, I think we'd entertain that. But only, again, I'm only speaking for myself. But Elaine, I have a question back to you on your comment. How do we reach those people? The people in Wellfleet who are maybe interested but not knowledgeable and not having the resources.
Well, I get the feeling that that's what Terry's going to be doing once
Is that
this,
right?
once this
Yeah.
news hits the media. Yeah, they'll be doing that work. That's
Is
what
it-
I hear.
Do you think it's mostly seniors, Elaine?
No,
Not necessarily?
no, a lot of young people that were able to buy a home when they didn't cost so much, have friends that they'd like to build something for. So I think it's the gamut.
Right. And I know of 3 ADUs that are either already permitted or in the works. I don't know how many others we have in Wellfleet, but. Okay. Any other comments on this? Ann, did you want to say something?
I was just going to say, obviously, you can help publicize the program. I mean, it would make sense to have it on the website and in your newsletter, and we'll be doing press releases that you can use. And as Terry said, we are planning on running ads in the local papers. We are going to do a radio advertising campaign. And we're going to contact all of the various town organizations that might be useful to us in advertising this. But any way in which you can help with that advertising effort,
Sure, we'd be happy.
reach the maximum number of people.
Right. And by the same time, I was thinking about it, that if we could put together a package that was 12.5 on a septic incentive and 10,000 from CDP and X dollars from the Housing Trust and Wellfleet to make it affordable. I mean, I think now you're really talking about impacting
Yeah.
with, if we got $30,000 or $40,000 worth of incentives, that might work. So if you guys have any thoughts on that, that'd be super. Ryan, I see that you have your hand up, and then I'll get to you
Yeah.
in a second, Sharon.
There's tax credits too for affordable.
And by the way, we also have are you talking about the reduction in the real estate tax, Ryan?
There's that, and I think there's another.
Right. So I'm right. You're right, Ryan. There's other resources that we could bring to bear as an incentive in a package. Terry, that we have a local ordinance in Wellfleet that gives you a reduction in your real estate taxes if you rent affordably.
Yes.
Great. Sharon, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure it's clear that at least my understanding of the septic allowance is really only for advanced innovative alternative, and it's really only the amount of money that would be required to build an innovative alternative system as opposed to a standard septic system. So it wouldn't apply to a standard septic system. It's not really that much of a help unless somebody is right on a water, within like 500 feet or 500 yards, something like that, of water.
Okay. Well,
That's my understanding.
So as I say, we hope to go to town meeting in June with our amendments to the ADU. So that would be a good time to have a package in place that we might be able to put something out at town meeting. So if you put on your
Yeah, oh,
thinking
that's a good
cap,
thought, yeah, yeah.
yeah, if you put on your thinking caps, and if we could have something back from you in the April timeframe
Sure,
for our next meeting, that would be super.
okay.
Okay, other questions or other comments from CDP?
Not for me, right?
Elaine, go ahead.
Okay, I just was
Elaine,
hoping,
you,
yes,
no, go ahead.
I just was hoping potentially, once you have this all out there for the public, like if our Wellfleet Forum was willing to do a program
Mhm.
just on this,
Sure.
that, could really, I think, bring a
Sure.
lot of people together, that would be great. That's all.
Thank you, Elaine. Okay, anything else that anyone has on this topic? I'll give it back to Harry at this point, if not. But Terry and Ann, thank you so much for your time tonight. We
You're
look
welcome.
forward to seeing what you come up with, and thank you for all the work that you're doing.
And to you.
Thanks.
Bye now.
Okay. Yeah, the next item I've got is the changes to the proposed ADU bylaw changes. And let me put them up on the screen. Hopefully my internet will cooperate long enough for this to happen. But the changes, and unfortunately this is not, this version is not highlighted. But basically, let's see if I can highlight all of them. The first, okay, this one, I'm sorry, this one is, this one's Ryan's proposal for zoning relief for undersized lots, to allow undersized lots to be built upon for affordable purposes. I don't know that I've circulated this to you before, but Ryan, if you're still on the call, do you want to talk about the idea here?
Sure. So, I think I presented an earlier draft to the Housing Trust, but the idea is that there are a number of unbuildable undersized lots within the town of Wellfleet. And that some of them could be used to build affordable housing on. It would be deed restricted affordable housing. It would run with the property in perpetuity or the longest allowable period by law. So it's stricter than a standard 40B, which expires after 25 or 30 years. I forget which one off the top of my head. So these would be permanently affordable units within the town of Wellfleet. It provides limited zoning relief on setbacks, the lot frontage on roadways, I mean that, and the minimum size. 10,000 square feet is the minimum allowed size for Title V septic systems. There is also a additional part that's under the control of the ZBA for lots under 10,000 square feet. There are limited possibilities where some of those might be buildable if they are on a shared septic system, or if area becomes sewered at some point in the future. But for those, they would have to go before the ZBA and have zoning relief granted to them. For the ones above 10,000 square feet with over 10,000 square feet contiguous upland area, those are buildable by right under this. So, and it's approximately 17 or 18 parcels without any issues, and another 26 that might be buildable, but might not be buildable. It depends on setbacks for those.
So is this draft, are you planning to have this on the 2022 annual town meeting?
Yes, it's likely, we'll see if we're gonna have two town meetings or not. So I'm not sure exactly which one yet. So if we do two.
Yeah, I'm just asking in terms of the timing of a recommendation by the trust.
Yep.
Whether this is something we should wait until we know it's going to be on the warrant or.
It's inserted
now
at
it's-
this point.
Okay.
In the warrant. So it has been voted to be inserted and referred to the planning board. And that was on February 8th.
Okay. So, is this something that we want to consider making a recommendation on?
I think we
Elaine's shaking her head. Okay. Okay, well, discussion and possibly a motion?
I think it's a great idea. Anything that we can possibly do to move the rock uphill, I think we need to do. And so I think it's great, Ryan, that you put this together.
It's fixed in time. Ryan, I forget how many, were there about 15 plots of land that would qualify?
There's like 17 that are entirely upland without any access issues. And are not close to water bodies where there might be, setback requirements from the Conservation Commission. There's another 26 that have a variety of potential issues, but that might be buildable or not. There are various shades of, how likely they are to be buildable. I couldn't really determine that without really a survey of each of those properties to to figure out. And there are certain things that could cause a parcel become functionally unbuildable as well, which could be, if there's no town water within a certain area, and the neighbors' septic systems are too close to put in a well, that you can't really build. So, yeah.
We have seen that happen on occasion.
Mm-hmm.
So would somebody like to offer a motion to recommend this bylaw change proposal?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? No, okay, so we'll roll call vote, Kathleen,
Aye.
Karen,
Aye.
Elaine,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
Gary,
Aye.
chair votes aye, that's 6 in favor, none opposed. Okay, so let me close this one. We got one more related piece to talk about, which are the amendments to the ADU bylaw. And let's see if I can find those now. Well, that's a little big. Okay, so these changes are largely technical. And this document reflects the edits that the Housing Authority and Local Housing Partnership made in a joint meeting. And I think that they stem primarily from the building inspector, building commissioner, wanting to be clear that the bylaw did not limit properties to a single accessory dwelling unit, but that multiple accessory dwelling units were permitted on a single parcel, number one. And so, for example, we've he's changed the definition a little bit to make it clear it's an accessory dwelling unit that's been defined. There's an addition in the use table, because without adding it to the use table, doesn't matter what you define, it's still got to be allowed somewhere. And that is, I think everywhere, but no, it's actually permitted everywhere.
Except the seashore.
Except the seashore, right?
This draft doesn't reflect that. Oh, I'm seeing. Or maybe
Yeah,
it does.
A.
That's the A, okay.
That's the A.
Yeah,
Harry, before you go on from there, on your
Yep.
chart, for whatever reason, the multifamily dwelling got displaced. So see above dwelling one family,
yep,
that should be dwelling multifamily. So we'll just make that correction when we send it along.
okay. Okay, and a little further down, again, the definition of an accessory dwelling unit is been changed to clarify that one or more dwelling units are allowed on a single lot. And then again, this change in 6.21.2.2 is to make it clear that the dimensional requirements for an ADU relate to each ADU individually, as opposed to collectively. And the building inspector correctly notes that towns in Massachusetts have either an inspector of buildings or a building commissioner, but they don't have building inspectors. So we've changed it in this section of the bylaw. It's probably pervasive in other sections of the bylaw, but I'll leave that to somebody else. And again, there are some more changes down here in the procedure to make it clear that it relates to each ADU. Again, to try and make it clear that multiple ADUs are allowed on a property. And finally, we have the change in the building commissioner's title, and we have the summary that came from that supports these changes. So they're largely drafting changes to resolve ambiguities. Discussion, comments, motion?
I'd like to move that the trust recommend the ADU bylaw changes as submitted.
Okay. Is there a
Second.
second? Is that Sharon?
That was Cat, was not on my tongue.
Okay, we'll give you credit this time, Sharon. Roll call, or any further discussion? Hearing none. Roll call vote, Kathleen,
Aye.
Sharon,
Aye.
Elaine,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
Gary,
Aye.
chair votes aye. So again, that's 6 in favor, none opposed. And see if we'll stop sharing for a little bit. What have I got next? Anything new on trust fundraising and website?
We were waiting for Michael to get with Charlie to have that discussion. I haven't heard back yet.
Okay. I will
I-
pass on that.
Right, I do know that there is an accounting of the trust, the housing trust going on, I think as we speak. Well, not actually right now, but in this time frame.
Mhm. Okay, let's see. So we'll go to additional community impact fees. Let me pop up the document. Let's see, file, close, file, open. Okay, and this came to me today from Ryan, although we've discussed it in the past. Ryan, do you want to comment on this?
Harry, we can't see it yet.
Oh, my apologies. That better?
Yes.
Sure. So there's two local options for community impact fees on short-term rentals. There are some limitations as to the number of properties it applies to. It applies to basically if there's two or more dwellings in common ownership within a town rented on a short-term basis, or sorry, I'm getting a little tired. I'm pretty sure it also applies to if there is a year-round house occupied by one person, and then there's another dwelling that they might own within town that they rent on a short-term basis as well. So there's two different options. I presented it to the select board with 3%, which is the maximum allowable local option. And the select board decided on 1%. And that's for both the first and the second option. The first option is on single family homes. And then, yeah.
Okay, yeah, there are two, Ryan, I think I would encourage you to check with council. I think these two sections have, the statute has got to be accepted by town meeting vote.
Yes.
So I don't think it's enough to just impose the fee. You've got to.
No, this
accept
is an article that's inserted in the town meeting warrant currently.
Right, but section 3DA, community impact fee of up to 3%. I believe the statute says this section must be separately accepted by a town meeting vote and the percentage set.
Yep.
And I think, so just encourage you to talk to council on this, because I think you've got to do both things, vote to accept section 3D paren A and impose the fee. And the other one, 3DB, allows a impact fee to be imposed on an owner-occupied 2 and 3 unit properties. So there are two separate community impact fees. Discussion on this proposal.
Ryan, could I ask, why did it go from, or what was the thinking for them to reduce it from 3 to 1?
I don't know. You'd have to ask Mike. So,
Okay, this would be on top of the current 6% fee.
yes, but not on all properties. So,
Right, but on these properties, it would go from 6% to 7%.
yep.
So I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble understanding exactly what the fee is being charged on. When we're saying transfer, we're not talking about sale, we're talking about turnover of a tenant.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a short-term rental tax, but the difference is that subsection A1 is imposed on professionally managed units, which probably means Airbnb, Del Mar Vacations, all those people. And then the second community impact fee is on, I think the statute says on owner-occupied 2 and 3 unit properties. I'm not sure why they are subject to this, but that's a separate impact fee.
Kind of.
So these would be, go ahead, I'm sorry, Ryan.
Yeah. So the legislation does not include real estate agents as operators. So it's specific to the owners of a property rather than an agency or of that like.
So we're basically looking to add another 1% to the 14.45% currently being charged on rentals. Is that it?
Only on certain
But-
ones.
Okay.
Really, essentially,
And so professionally managed doesn't include those managed by realtors?
Not
I
unless
think
not unless the owner owns 2 or more.
And why would we, like, I'm not really sure I understand who is a professional managing a unit then, like,
That's the way the legislation is written. So,
but who is, if it's not a realtor, then who would be, what's professional? And who would be paying this fee?
1 second, I have the definition.
Okay,
So,
I'm sorry.
yep, okay. Because this has caused confusion with other people as well. So professionally managed unit is defined as one of 2 or more short-term rental units that are located in the same city or town, operated by the same operator, and not located within a single-family, 2-family, or 3-family dwelling that includes the operator's primary residence. And it also defines what an operator is. An operator is a person operating a bed and breakfast establishment, hotel, lodging house, short-term rental, or motel in the Commonwealth, including but not limited to the owner or operator of such premises, the leasee, the subleasee, the mortgagee in possession, licensee, or any other person otherwise operating such bed and breakfast establishment, hotel, lodging house, short-term rental, or motel. So,
So the motels in town, and if somebody owned multiple investment properties, would be the only people paying this?
not really. So this one is on single family homes. And a lot of hotel rooms are not considered dwellings either. And the guidance from the DLS is specific on that has to be dwellings.
Okay, so then it would only be someone who owns multiple short-term rental properties that, I don't know, are considered dwellings?
Yes.
Okay, do we have any idea how many of those are in town?
I put a summary on each one as to how many, and the different options. For the, yeah, so the definitions for section 3D are in section 1. Yeah, I think it's 143 single family homes within Wellfleet that are owned by the same, that have the same owner owning 2 or more.
And what if their single family home they live in and then they rent the other one? Is that someone that would have to pay this fee? Or it would just be if they have 2 rentals?
Let's see. No, they have to be short-term rentals.
Okay,
So if they own more than basically 2 short-term rentals in the house in Wellfleet.
so it's probably not 143.
No,
then.
it'll be a little less than that.
Okay. Okay, I'm assuming that this is what we're allowed to do. That's why we're just picking that small segment, because it's gonna not be that much
Yep.
bang for our buck. But certainly if someone owns more than 2 short-term rentals or 2 or more short-term rentals in Wellfleet, I think it seems fine that they should have to pay a little more to the community because their business is part of what is hurting our affordable housing situation.
Yep.
Do we know, can we dictate where that money goes?
That's, Harry will probably show you a little bit later.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
there's an article that we've inserted, dedicating basically all the funds to Affordable Housing Trust. So.
Yeah, and the
there are
statute
certain-
requires,
Yep. 35% will be required to be used exclusively for affordable housing. And the remaining 65% would be unrestricted. But, to the trust, not.
The trust would decide what they were gonna do with it,
Yep,
but the whole 100% goes to the trust.
yes.
Okay. What do we need to do with this?
well, I think what Ryan's looking for, if I may put words in his mouth, is I think he's looking for a recommendation.
Okay. I recommend that the Housing Trust support what Ryan has proposed.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, further discussion?
I would say that the only other thing that you might want to weigh in on is the percentage assessed.
Okay, so let's kind of hold on that motion. Do we want to discuss supporting it the way it is presented? And let me go back to that, and that's a 1% fee. It can be up to, current proposal is 1%. It can be up to 3%. Too bad Mike is not here tonight, because we could get his perspective on why he feels 1% is appropriate.
So I'm just trying to wrap my whole head around it, and I'm sorry, I'm struggling with it a little bit, but I have to go back to the thought that if somebody owns two or more investment properties in our town, but does not rent them through a real estate company, they're the only people that are gonna have to pay it?
No, a real estate company, it applies to ones rented through a real estate company. It's
Oh,
just,
okay.
and I would also say that I think some of the operators might be vulnerable to it too. The ones that basically sublease the property for the summer from the owner and then sublease it out. They could be considered the leasee of those properties as well. But
Okay,
that would be harder to track down.
If town meeting is in June, we have the option of considering this at our next meeting if we need more clarity, or we can proceed tonight to make a recommendation. Whatever your pleasure is.
I think it feels wrong if Mike is the person that thought it should be down to 1 and he's part of our board to just overrule it without at least hearing something about why he felt that, because he's a pretty big proponent of affordable housing.
I
So,
am inclined to agree with you. I think it's unfortunate that he's not here, and I guess I'd like to hear his perspective on this myself.
I would agree with that. I'd like to hear his perspective as well.
So Harry, it's been moved and seconded. Do we have to have a separate motion to table it?
Yeah, that would fix the problem.
So I would move that we table a discussion for the reasons stated.
second,
Okay, yeah. Well, one would be specific
So
and
to be
table it until the next meeting. I'm sorry?
And
Did
to
I
be
miss
clear, the
someone out
only
there?
sticking point, to be clear, it's Sharon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Sharon, just
The only
barely.
sticking point is whether it's 1%, 2%, or 3%. That's the only thing that needs to
think
be
that's-
discussed further.
I think that's correct. But can we table it until the next meeting so we don't have to take a motion to take it from the table also?
Yes.
Okay. There a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Well, I don't think motions to table are debatable. Roll call vote. Kathleen,
Aye.
Darren,
Aye.
Elaine,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
Gary,
Aye.
chair votes aye, 6 in favor and none opposed. I'm gonna stop sharing here. Thank you very much, Ryan. And we'll get back to this. If there's anything else you're looking for recommendations from us on, just send it to me and I'll attempt to keep track of it.
Yeah, there's the second local option as well, which is pretty similar.
Yeah, and we do both of them here, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And then the article dedicating the funds to the Affordable Housing Trust, I think you can probably vote on that tonight. That doesn't have anything to do with the percentages being collected.
Yeah, except I don't really have that on the agenda, so
Okay.
I haven't seen. I'd love to make sure it gets in front of the trustees so we can all
Okay.
vote on it.
And there's
Okay.
one other zoning bylaw that I put forward and is now inserted in the warrant as well. And that has to do with allowing cottage colonies to be occupied on a year-round basis.
Okay. We'll certainly take all those up as soon as I've got something to put in front of the trustees. And thank you, Ryan.
Yep, anytime.
Thank you,
Okay,
Ryan.
good. Next item is status of 90 Freeman Ave. This has really been star-crossed. I had an appointment scheduled with Becky just before I left for Maryland, and she was stuck at a car dealership with a non-functioning car. So it didn't happen. So it still remains to be rescheduled, and this is a meeting that was originally going to be in January, I think. But there has been no action on this beyond my feeling that the Housing Authority should be the entity to issue the RFP, and that the main thing we need to get done is to get the property deeded to the Housing Authority so they can do that. So I sat down to prepare for this meeting before it didn't happen, and that's my recollection of where the focus needs to be on this. Elaine?
Would it be inappropriate for us to ask Mass Housing Partnership if they would review the RFP for us?
Not at all. I think more eyes, the better.
Okay, because I mean, if they can give it the seal of approval, we know it would be okay to issue. Would you like,
Okay,
would you like the Housing Authority to do that?
that would be wonderful. Do you want me to go through the document and remove the ambiguity of whether the Housing Authority is actually the issuer? 'Cause I'm not
Yes.
sure that the draft, so I can do that.
Can I suggest that we invite Becky to our next trust meeting, and maybe we can, if there's anything that is in fact material that we can talk it through and hopefully get this out?
That's an excellent idea, Gary.
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand. What do you have to meet with her in person about, Harry?
Well, I don't really, but I got to find her when she's in the office, and that's been, well, it just hasn't happened for a number of reasons. She was out sick once, she had a car problem once, and
Mm-hmm.
I also have the impression that the assistant town administrator's job really is a 1.5 person or 2 person job.
Oh.
So my sense is she's probably underwater too, but.
I'd say 3.
Well, I know how I felt as a town administrator without one for 6 months, and it was not fun.
Yeah.
So that's I will edit the document. I'll invite Becky, and so I'll clean it up and make sure Elaine has it, so you can show it to Mass Housing Partnership. Okay.
Good. I think that
Anything
we
else?
really need to make that a priority because we know it's going to be a long while and yet we also know we can build on it. So let's move on it.
Yeah, this one is, there's no finding land, there's no finding money. It's there already. We just need to execute on it.
Mhm.
Okay. That was, let's see. Let's do the meeting minutes now, and then we can talk about the next meeting agenda. Where are my minutes?
Karen,
Yes.
were we going to talk about my letter to the editor? Did
Oh,
that get
I'm
it on?
sorry.
Get onto?
Yeah, it did. Unfortunately, this is an old copy of the agenda. My apologies, Sharon. Let's look at the right copy of the agenda. Yeah. I skipped this because I had printed this out in anticipation of being away from my files. So I skipped over authorization of proposed correspondence in behalf of the trust. So, Sharon, just a little
Yeah, I'm here.
background. Sharon had drafted a letter and mindful of the select board's policy of individual select board members not sending correspondence without the full board's approval, and the fact that I think there's a code of conduct draft around that would apply the same sort of standard to other boards and committees, I asked Sharon to hold off on that until we could discuss it. So I did add that to the agenda. So you want to go ahead, Sharon?
There was never any worry about me sending it off without approval, believe me.
Oh, good.
Anything I write, I get everybody to edit it. And, I just wanted to put it out there. That was something that was requested of me at the local housing partnership meeting. And so I was trying to do.
I certainly have no objection to your draft. Let me see if I can find it now. This is going to be a challenge.
Can you give us an idea while he's looking, Sharon, as to what it's about?
Yeah, Kathleen, it was a thank you. It was a letter to the editor of the Independent, thanking them for the wonderful article about the buy down purchases that happened this year. And also thanking the sellers of the 2 properties that were sold as buy down properties this year. And also giving a little plug for, maybe other people might want to consider doing a similar thing.
Nice.
Its location has eluded me, so I don't have it to show you, but that's an accurate summary of it.
Sharon, is it the same? Has it changed since you sent it?
No.
Originally? Do you want me to pull it up, Harry?
Well, if I can find it, Gary, that's the challenge.
No, I say I have it.
Oh, yes, then please.
I would have to say that press like that and getting stories out about people doing it. I happen to be dining with a friend who has a house here in town, lives in it, has no children, and was telling me that she's gonna leave her house to the Lily House, based on the fact that Sandy Wonders did that. And, you know, it's like the sort of thing where if people hear of somebody else's goodwill, and it puts the idea in their mind.
Exactly.
Oh,
I don't know
I'm
that the Lily
completely in
House is-
favor of sending. I'm sorry, I was just gonna say, I'm just completely in favor of sending this.
Terry, I pulled it up.
You're a host, so you should be able to share.
Yep, hold on.
Is it at all a problem that we don't have Mike here tonight? Do we?
Ah, there we go.
No. Okay. Can people see it?
We can only see the end.
To the bottom.
And once you just scroll up a little, Gary, I think we'll be good. Thank
Perfect.
you.
Right there.
I mean, I think it's a wonderful letter and should be sent.
I do too.
It probably needs to get voted on by the Housing Authority and the partnership also, correct?
It's on our agenda
Oh.
for Thursday at the Housing Authority.
Right.
If you want to send it sooner, we could just make it from the trust. Because we won't have a partnership meeting for a few weeks.
Right. No, that's a good idea. If the Housing Authority,
Honestly, I'm willing to take the heat and say we will approve this.
I was given the charge at the Housing Partnership meeting to do this, so.
Right, so I think we could probably, if it passes tonight and it passes the Housing Authority, and you want to send it before we meet in a few weeks, I don't have any problem with that.
Sharon, there's a typo in the first sentence of the last paragraph. There's two thes.
Okay,
Sharon, you see it right here?
Yeah.
yeah, okay. I can fix that. I knew you would find anything that would be there, Kathleen. I so appreciate it.
All right, I live with the grammar police, so I'm used to it.
I need the grammar police, so all is good.
Okay, can we just agree by consensus that it's okay to send this?
Right. Before,
Mhm.
do you want to say, do we need to say Wellfleet housing buy down in the second line?
Okay, I can add that.
Yeah.
And it would be nice if you would put affordable in between Wellfleet and housing in the thank you. Is Wellfleet
Where's that?
affordable?
On the
Wellfleet
housing
affordable
trust.
housing trust? Nope, down in the signature
Oh,
line,
Wellfleet
Sharon.
Affordable.
Yes,
Yep,
I think that would be, we-
more correct.
just good branding, that's all.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Yep, exactly.
Does anybody have any concern about sending this?
Mm-mm.
No,
Okay, hearing none, fire away.
Okay, thank you.
Yep,
Thank you for writing it.
My pleasure.
Sharon, if you have a chance to make the edits and send it to me for the Housing Authority on Thursday.
Okay, yep, that'll probably be tomorrow morning.
Okay.
I'll do that. And I'll send you the name of the plumber too.
Yeah, thank you.
yeah,
Wait, is that the Mexican plumber or the Wellfleet plumber?
It's much easier to find one here in Mexico.
Can I stop sharing this?
yes,
Mm-hmm.
please. I have one more document for you. And that is the minutes from February 17th.
I saw
February
Kathleen,
7th.
7.
Mhm.
Any corrections, additions, typos? There was
Harry,
one that was
did I
called the.
send you my corrections?
Yeah.
I did, okay.
Yeah, see, I did track changes so we can see the changes that I made, the insertion of the words.
We can't see the, whatever you're sharing.
Oh, yeah, yes,
I
you're right.
think if I sent them to you, I tried to send them to everybody just so that everybody wouldn't duplicate the same work, not to be
Right.
like, you know,
There we go.
bug everybody with it, but why not just,
Mhm.
No. Okay, so here's the draft. I inserted the word since, and I think there was one other change. No, I think that was the only one.
yeah, I did suggest below that, 1, 2, 3 sentences after zoning amendment, I wrote on my notes, maybe should say is also instead of are both, but maybe you decided that are both was right.
I felt our both was correct, but maybe
Great.
because that was, where was that again, Kathleen?
That was right in the same number, Harry. It's 3 sentences below where you made the correction. Or 3 lines below. So it's, he also noted that along with DLTA grant requests, the small lot zoning amendment are both on the select board agenda for February 8th. I thought
Yeah,
it
I
should
thought-
say is also on the select board agenda.
Oh, I see why.
How
Okay.
about I insert the word and here, so it's clear that I'm referring to 2 items. when I
Perfect.
say both. Okay, so that was my thinking.
Yeah,
Do we need the Oxford comma here, folks?
Mhm.
That's fine.
got it.
Okay. Anybody care to offer a motion?
I move we approve the minutes as amended or corrected, however.
Second,
And I second it.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, roll call, Kathleen,
Aye.
let's see, who's next on our list here? Sharon,
aye.
Elaine,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
Gary,
Aye.
chair votes aye, that's 6 in favor, none opposed. Next meeting and future meeting agenda. Let me stop sharing. And I have a calendar handy.
Could I just ask if, does the move of the town meeting to June affect anything else we have going on?
It might.
It may, but
There were other things
it's-
that might affect it.
That's fine.
yeah, it's difficult to talk about outside of an executive session, so let's leave that. I would be inclined to look at the first Monday in April, if I can. Let's see, where-
That'd be the 4th, Harry.
Okay. Anybody have any other preference?
Want me to put it on?
That's fine.
Okay. Okay, and why don't you send me agenda items? I know I've got to get 90 Freeman Ave back on it, and there'll be a couple more things from Ryan. Hopefully some clarification on the community impact fee. I think it really is very confusing what it applies to.
Well, and perhaps by that meeting, we'll have something else to put on it and discuss.
We could, hopefully.
Okay.
Harry, could we put housing trust, excuse me, housing trust finances or accounting? Hopefully we'll
yes.
have something from town hall then, by then.
Mhm.
And put my agenda down, but wasn't there something on tonight's agenda about maybe the website and fundraising or?
We're waiting. We did touch on it.
We're waiting.
We're waiting.
Okay, because we're waiting to hear back. Okay.
It was very brief. Okay.
And might I say, it's very inspiring that 3 of you are on vacation and here at this meeting. So thank you for that.
Well, here we are.
It was a trick finding a place with internet connection.
Well,
I
I'm
noticed the
supposed to
Pacific is
continue.
not in the background anymore, Sharon.
No, I'm in a tiny little town in central northern Mexico, waiting to go to Copper Canyon, which is larger than the Grand Canyon.
Oh,
Yeah, we have
Wow.
friends who are going there in a couple of weeks. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
Well, enjoy.
thank
I
you.
only got as far south as Maryland.
Yeah.
And I'm cooking.
Went to
for 2
Connecticut.
days. Okay, if there's nothing else, perhaps a motion to adjourn would be in order.
Harry,
So
did we say
moved.
7 o'clock on the 4th?
mhm.
Yeah, I just assumed that, but yes.
I move, we adjourn.
There a second?
Second,
Okay, Elaine,
Aye.
Kathleen,
Aye.
Aaron,
aye.
Gary,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye, 6 in favor, none opposed. We are adjourned. Thank you for your
Sharon,
time, everyone.
Sharon, I didn't
you.
say it, but thank you so much for doing that letter. I should have said that earlier.
It was my pleasure.
A great job,
Good.
as always.
Oh, thank you. Okay, everybody. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Aye.
Right.